So our next speaker, as you can see, is Mark Bishop. He was a professor at Monterey Peninsula College in California. He's recently retired to spend almost all of his time on his entrepreneurial pursuits, it seems. I met Mark many, many years ago at a biennial chemistry conference. There was a session pretty much like this, talking about different publishing models. And they scheduled it at 8 a.m. Like they schedule a lot of things at 8 a.m. And the only people that were actually up and in the room were textbook publishers and the speakers. And I remember Mark gave his speech about his book that he's going to talk about now. And every textbook publisher was interested in talking to him thereafter. But Mark had his own plans. And I want to hear you to hear what I heard many years ago that I found to be kind of a source of inspiration. And something that I've kind of held with me for many years until we had the opportunity to work together at WebAssign here by partnering with Mark's Chiral Publishing Company. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark Bishop.
Thank you. Is this working? That was such a nice introduction. Maybe we should quit. The happy hour sounded good to me. In fact, I was a little concerned this late in the day that I was going to be able to keep you amused, so I had these little fantasies of what I'd do. I'm just going to share one of them. I was going to ask Steve to dress up like Vanna White. So let's just take a moment to picture Steve going, yeah, what do you think? Yeah. And what do you think is really the question. Yeah. Here's what I thought I'd do. I thought I'd just give you an introduction to what I've done, and if I have time, tell you a little bit how you can do the same thing. Even got some slides that deal with the tools that I've used and so forth. And then I thought I'd go to happy hour, okay? Although there are people to talk after me. So let me tell you what I've done. So my textbook is what's called Prep Chem. It's for the class that gets people prepared for general college chemistry. It's kind of high school level, but mostly taught in colleges. Although, as I'll mention in a minute, it's used in some high schools. Since I'm not talking to chemists solely, I'll leave it up to the chemist to ask me questions about the details if you want to know about that. It was originally published by Benjamin Cummings in 2002. I actually didn't have to pay for the rights back. I don't know what that says, but they just gave them to me. I was interested to find that Barbara had to pay. And I have no idea what indemnify means. But I don't know whether I was involved in that or not, but nobody sued us. But anyway, a similar story with Benjamin Cummings due to all the consolidation in the publishing industry. What I started out with Benjamin Cummings as the Prep Chem book, and then I became one of many, including Timberlake, which the chemists will know about. So anyway, I got the rights back. My title back in the previous slide, the Don't Give Up, was partly directed towards me. I'm not one to give up. So I created my own publishing company, which is pretty much me in the garage. And I've published it in a sort of combination of traditional and non-traditional approach. So there's a regular printed text, which, Chris, where are you? We forgot. Yeah, we totally forgot to bring one. But they exist. They, you know, they're just like the traditional books by now, although it's sort of grown up with time. You know, it started, I printed it digitally and, you know, just black and white. But now it's full color and offset printed and hardcover and, you know, the whole traditional textbook thing, which Chris is going to come and individually show you in your hometowns. Maybe, I don't. There are two versions of the text. For the chemist, there's a sort of somewhat, well, actually neither one of them are traditional. There's a chemistry first version that gets to chemical reactions early and postpones the math, that was the first version, by the way, which the reviewers loved and the adopters were not so enthusiastic about it, partly because it involved rearranging their approach to things and so forth. Anyway, and I've since then made what's called an Adams First version. In fact, I usually bring this up because I consider it to be my main claim to fame. If you Google Adams First, unless it's changed in the last month or so, I'm #1. Don't you figure that's like the gauge of success these days, you know, if you can get #1 in something for Google. That and balancing redox equations, by the way. I'm #1 for that, too. But anyway, it's freely available on the net. The web address is there. It's preparatorychemistry.com. And there's a ton of stuff there. So not only is the textbook there in PDF form, divided up into chapters, but go there and play. There's an audio version, which is basically, it's kind of a flash-based PowerPoint presentation with me reading the text. I don't know whether a lot of people use it, but a number of them that have used it say it's very calming. Has sort of a sedative effect. You know, you can't read for very long before you kind of fall into this droning. But anyway, it's there. I've done all sorts of animations. A lot of the chemists here are probably familiar with them. Now these days, flash-based animations. There are tutorials. And there's WebAssign. And like Barbara said, I am thrilled with WebAssign. It's relatively new. I actually can beat her in the newbie category. I've only been using WebAssign myself in the class for about 6 months or so, something like that. Actually, I told Mark that if we needed to show people the WebAssign thing, that he'd probably be better finding it than I would be. But anyway, it's done, it's made a world of difference in the sort of credibility of the self-publishing. You know, I'm totally excited about having a sales force. Because up to now, it's sort of been me as the sales force. In fact, the chemists in the crowd probably have been annoyed by emails. And shame on you if you send me directly to the trash. Because there might be something I would say would be useful at some point. Anyway, here's what I'm doing with my free time now that I'm retired. I know any of you are aware of the differences, sort of the restrictions in formatting for an iBook or an iPad version of a textbook, but basically I'm taking what I've done to create the physical textbook and the PDFs, and I'm putting it in a form that can be viewed on an iPad. And I must tell you that I more often than not think I'm spending a huge amount of time making it worse. But it's what's happening. So anyway, lots of different options here. Mentioned that we were going to talk about cost, although I must tell you that I'm now feeling a little greedy. Because my book is not as cheap as Barbara's. And I don't have my kids through college yet. I've got an 11-year-old who still needs it. But anyway, here's the sort of rundown for this, just to give you a sense. So they can buy it off my website for $69.95, including shipping. List price in the bookstore is $79.95, which is roughly half of what the other books in the same market cost. WebAssign is $40. Excuse me to the chemists that now know that you can get a math book for $25. And as Barbara mentioned, the text and PDF form and all of my animations and my audio presentations and all that sort of thing, they're all linked together with the WebAssign questions, which the students really like, I think. They can go to the problems. They're having trouble with that. They get a link that takes them to the section in the textbook where they can get help with that sort of thing. They like moving stuff. They can click on the icon that sends them to the animations when that's appropriate. So all linked together. Very cool. For the preparatorychemistry.com, everything is there. Everything's freely accessible. No usernames, no passwords. Periodic request to send me $20 if somebody feels like it. And now and then people actually do. I made $600 last year on the $20 payments. Not sending any one of my kids to a large portion of college, but I got like, I don't know, a day and a half paid for. And anyway, and I make it clear to them that if 20 bucks is an issue, then they can use it for free, which is what most people do. There's a DVD, which is just a DVD of my website for folks that like to carry it around on their laptop. It started selling to some high schools, private high schools mostly, because it's really hard to get the public schools to accept Churl Publishing Company, which is the chemist. It's Chiral. But which I always tell the bookstore managers when they call up and say, is this Churl Publishing Company? But anyway, I've started to give a side license to a lot of the online high schools and so forth. Not a lot of them are using it, but 5 or 6 of them. So anyway, lots of options. I don't think I'll take time to go to any of these at this point. In fact, I haven't been keeping track of time, but another 5 minutes or something. In fact, let me find out what I should do. You tell me. I'm tired of making decisions. How many people have either written a textbook or thought about writing a textbook and might be interested in knowing the tools that you can use to get all these things? Anybody? Well, I know you have. Really? Well, I'm going to show you anyway, because you should think about it. I mean, you got the brain power in the room. Why aren't you thinking about it? As was mentioned earlier, it's really not that hard. You have to be mildly compulsive. You have to have your wife give you a hard time or mention at parties that, you disappear. That's what she calls it. We have a little house out in back. It's kind of like a shed with a computer in it. And there's, the kids will say, yeah, Dad's disappearing again. But just to plant the seed, if you're interested in this. It's time-consuming, but it's not difficult, I guess, is the message here. So if you're at all interested, let me just quickly run through the tools that you might use. I never should have asked you, huh? Because I asked you whether anybody was interested, and pretty much you said, no, we're not interested, and then I'm going to do it anyway. But, I get 15 minutes. I can do it as I please. Usually I show pictures of my kids, but you're probably not interested in that. But anyway, if you are in the back of your mind, even though you weren't willing to admit it, thinking about doing this sort of thing, there are just some amazing tools these days that make it relatively easy to create everything that the publisher can do for you, actually, almost everything, except the sales force. So I use InDesign for the layout program. If you're familiar with these sorts of things, it's similar to Quark. It's becoming, I think, the industry standard for this. It'll even create the EPUB files, by the way, that are what you need to make an iPad book. It's not as nice as the PDF version. Anyway, Photoshop, Illustrator, I did all the drawing and so forth myself, so all the art in the book was created in Illustrator. Acrobat you need, you know about that, website stuff, Flash. But probably the most useful thing on this slide is that you can get an academic discount for these sorts of things. And you can get a whole package of all these tools that allow you to do all these things for, I don't know whether that seems like a lot of money or not, but it's not compared to getting each of these programs separately and so forth. If you're thinking at all about self-publishing, it's also one of those things that's not as difficult as it might seem at first. You pick a name, you've got to put an ad in the paper. In fact, if any of you are interested in any of these sorts of things, since I should probably wrap it up fairly soon, I'd be more than happy to correspond with you and so forth because I enjoy that. I think it's interesting for folks to find out that it's possible to do these things without going through the large academic publishing company. Although I must say that I have fond feelings for the large academic publishing companies because they did a lot for me. Anyway, there's that. Printing, digital printing is sort of the place to start, I think. You don't have to get big print runs. I started printing 100 at a time, and now I'm printing 4,000 at a time. And when you get to that, then you do offset printing and a little better quality, better paper, that sort of thing. I suspect you don't want to hear about my shipping supplies, but Uline is good for that. I just expanded. Companies expand into new cities and so forth. I expanded into a storage unit, where I keep all my shipping supplies and stuff. Yeah. It's a small operation. Thought I'd show you my recording studio. That's all it takes. You buy a microphone, you get a little interface that'll take it from the microphone into the computer, and you risk getting carpal tunnel syndrome editing out all those ahs, and so forth. But it's reasonably simple as well. That's the information about these sorts of things. Web tools. If you want to hear about the two different versions of my text, I'll tell you, but not now, because I'm thinking the clock says quarter after, a little past. So if you've got questions, and they're quick, I will answer them.
How are you handling the money?
Oh, I'm enjoying it.
Somebody from overseas wants to buy this many books. How is it time?
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, let me start with the easy ones. The individual books that are purchased from my website, it's PayPal. So they can pay with either a credit card or through PayPal. I actually really like that. They take a little percentage, but it's very, very simple. I haven't had too many overseas orders, although I've had one that they keep teasing me with in let's see if I can remember this. I think it's Ibn bin Saud Medical University in Saudi Arabia. And we went through, how would they pay, and I was told by somebody who's working there that I had to get the money up front because they're kind of casual about that. But the real answer to your question is I just trust them. And so I just send the books, and I haven't been disappointed yet. Even the 10 books that I sent to Bulgaria. Although the disappointment there is apparently they dumped them in the river on the way, but that's a whole other story. Huh?
You must have some good reason for picking up the name Chiral.
Yeah, there's a story there. Chiral, I don't know whether you're all familiar with this. They're things that are chiral or mirror images of each other. So I don't know whether it's a good reason, but the self-publishing is sort of the evil twin or something. Or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know which way it works. But, yeah, so. I whine a lot about Steve Jobs and why does he have this issue. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. So far, I haven't dealt with it. So I'm kind of waiting for the industry to decide what's next, and I'll probably just redo them, all the animations and so forth. Yeah, it's no small issue. It's a big one. Although what I'm assuming is that most people who have iPads probably also have a computer sitting next to it. So even though it's not as convenient, you just can't click on a link and open up the flash animation like you can from the computer. At least they can see it if they want to work at it. Anything else? Thanks.